Let's get talking now. With Nigeria's revenue not covering its debt servicing obligations in the first 4 months of the year, the International Monetary Fund has urged countries, of course, Nigeria and other sub-Saharan African countries currently experiencing high external debt to take proactive measures to enable them escape debt default. IMF, in its recently released World Economic Outlook for July 2022, titled Gloomy and More Uncertain, noted that as advanced economies, central banks continues to raise interest rates to fight inflation, financial conditions worldwide will continue to tighten, as this will result in the increase in borrowing costs, which will continue to put pressure on domestic monetary policies of emerging markets and developing economies. It will interest you to know that the $250 billion pile of distressed debt is threatening to drag the developing world into a historic cascade of defaults. To give us insights into this and, of course, other economic issues, I'm being joined live in our Lagos studios by a partner, our senior economist at SPM Professionals, Mr. Paul Alaje. It's good to have you in the Lagos studio. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so very much for having me.
Yes, let's get straight to business. The IMF is warning about debt default. Yes, we're going to touch on the CBN governor being summoned because I saw the way you reacted when I was actually taking that report. But let's start with what IMF is saying. Nigeria and sub-Saharan countries need to be careful so that they don't default in debt repayment. Just last week also, Nigeria servicing debt for the quarter was higher than revenue we generated during the same period. How worrisome is all of this and what the IMF is saying?
Well, IMF is telling Nigeria the obvious truth. As we speak, we have so much to deal with. I think we have taken a bowl of issues or bowl of debts is bigger than our truth, and it's a bit tough for us to consume. So people have asked, what is really the issue? Do we have a debt crisis or we have revenue issue? There would have been no debt if we are earning enough in terms of revenue. So our first problem is revenue. So for us to say we should continue to borrow more while we are not generating more revenue, we put us in a worse position. But you see, it's important for us to look at this issue holistically, beyond what just IMF is saying to us, and so on and so forth. Nigeria is among the countries that have been mentioned by IMF as countries that may be having challenges or concerns regarding paying back their debt. What IMF needs to further emphasize is that some other countries even borrowed more than Nigeria. But the difference with this country that borrowed trillions of dollars, while Nigeria is still in the neighborhood of billions, is that they are able to finance it via revenue. And the GDP capacity to tax revenue is huge. That's the taxation of the GDP is robust. Some of them, you have 20%, you have 25%. But Nigeria is barely 6%. So what can you do when we talk about our huge GDP? How functional is it to government in terms of revenue? Very small, very negligible. So when we say we have robust GDP, and the GDP is not really giving us as such what we should look at. And the truth is that, can this economy generate revenue? The answer is yes. I'll give you an instance. One of the states in Southwest, I spoke with some time ago, and we saw that the state could generate about 8 trillion naira additional. So we said, you can generate 8 trillion naira because people do business within your territory. And by this revenue generation, I'm not talking of collecting 5,000 naira or 10,000 naira from Okada rider. No, those are people that are already poor. We are talking of businesses that are raking 1 trillion naira and more every year from this country. So, and what they pay government, including federal government, is less than 2 billion in taxes. So we said, these guys are doing business within your state, and you can get about 8 trillion. At least if you take one sector, one section of what they do, they are supposed to give you approximately 3 billion naira. But the state, the state executive, not the governor, the people in charge of revenue, they say, feel that no, we don't want to be helped. But these are the money we are not collecting. We know, leave it. It's our money. When we are ready, we'll collect it. So the question is, such states will also run to federal government. Federal government is bleeding, and this may not be the end. I don't really think this is the end, because we don't know when God will touch the mind of Putin to stop the ongoing crisis. Because right now, America cannot go too forward to say he wants to support Ukraine by throwing missiles back to Russia. The world will be a big mess.
Yes.
So they are supporting from a distance. But Ukraine also will not give up on time because of territorial integrity concern. If that continues to happen, what happens to African countries that are largely dependent on them? If you go to China today, China has also, started lockdown. In fact, lockdown has been on in China because of resurgence of COVID. And I see those who are in presidential council say we might be experiencing the 5th wave of COVID-19 because we saw a surge also in Lagos, Abuja, and a few other places. What all of this is telling us is that we are not able to generate revenue. Those that should be generating revenue don't even have capacity to some extent to generate it. We have seen the best, what do we call it, FRS is doing. We have seen custom, we have seen immigration. But what can we do even money from maritime? It's still very, very low. A number of communication is not happening among government agencies that would have also further driven revenue, driven employment, driven growth to our country. But because, I don't know where, maybe it's the civil service rule or it is greed of individuals, that is why we are not having revenue. If you ask me about debt 10 times, I will tell you 11 times that what can take us out of shackles of debt, because as it is, we might have no option. In 2020 or thereabout, we spent 80% of our revenue to service debt. Now look at this. We have a lot of things in our budget. Debt service is just a component. So if we are servicing in a quarter, part of the year, we are spending more than revenue to service debt. What are we going to use to pay salary? What are we going to use to provide infrastructure? We have insecurity, even in the so-called FCT. Insecurity concerns. How are we going to buy arms for our militaries, for our police, and others to combat insurgents and insecurity in our country when all that we earn is not enough? And you saw the projection. About 6 trillion naira will go into subsidy financing in 2022. We are far more than that into debt service, about 6 trillion. In total. So, but how much are we generating this year, 2023, I beg your pardon, 2022, we are projecting about 8 trillion naira revenue. Do I think we'll generate 8 trillion? I doubt. I doubt. Because NNPC is not remitting.
Yeah.
All the monies that goes through NNPC is through exchange. And the federal government, let's say federal government, the federation, have been struggling and been getting more borrowing to share. If not, the protests you saw yesterday and 2 days ago would have been ubiquitous everywhere. But state governors still have a little to pay. Now, when they saw opportunity to generate revenue, and these revenues are there, they find it challenging. Like one of the ministers said, we don't have the will to respond, by some of our security agencies. It's a huge concern for us. IMF is saying it. I'm happy IMF is coming up to say something because, last year, I remember I was with you even in 2019, and we're looking at, was it 2019 or 2018? When the then president of America, I think Trump, made policies that was against China because of $5 billion difference in terms of trade imbalance. And we said if this extends to 2020, it was going to be a big issue. Rather than Mr. Trump reducing the potency of his law, it actually increased. 2019 December, we didn't know COVID struck. And when COVID struck, we saw the potency of COVID-19 concerns around the world towards 2021 and 2022 February, Mr. Putin added his own to it. Who is next? We don't know. What it means is that for Nigeria to come out of economic quagmire and to stop borrowing, because we have no option in real sense. And when you borrow more, interest rate would increase, particularly when your appetite for borrowing increases. As it is, our appetite is high. You could see what NPR is now, 14%.
That's where I want to go.
NPR
Do you think that will really help? We've seen that spike. First was 150 basis points shift. Now at the next meeting, 100. That was really, really so swift. Many were not even expecting that to happen the way it did.
I wasn't expecting.
Do you think that will help rein in inflation?
It will help to slow down the potency of inflation. But inflation will still grow anyway. And I'll tell you why. Because what is accountable for this inflation is imported inflation. It is not just the demand pull inflation. It's cost push. Why? Because all over the world, see, we are not protests happening in Nigeria. Go to UK. Railway workers are on strike. A lot of people are on strike in UK and in different other economies. Why? Because of inflation. They are seeing the kind of inflation they've never seen in history. Why? Because we decided to touch a monster. A monster wanted to have his way, but the world said no. And by that, I mean the crisis going on between Ukraine and Russia. 20% of gas supply going to Europe have been distorted, have been stopped. So it's having negative impact on the economy. How many times have UK changed their leaders because of protests and agitation and concern? 3 times in 5 years. And you may want to ask the price of diesel there. The price of diesel is nothing to compare with in Nigeria. It's about 830, 840 in Nigeria. There is huge, far more than what we are paying here. So do I think that raising NPR, the question is the investor that wants to come to Nigeria, where do we ask him to go to? Let's start from Maiduguri. We say no, most likely. Kaduna, most likely, no. Or will he stay in the federal capital territory? All schools have been asked to stay at home. Neighboring states, all schools should stay at home. And people have been asked to watch their steps. Maybe we come to Lagos. Are we also very insulated from concerns in Lagos? Our concern or our interest as a people and as Nigerians is that we will not have a spread of violence all over our country so that we can attract investors. But maybe portfolio investor. But when portfolio investor assume the portfolio investor came in 2000, year 2020, I beg your pardon. And what was exchange rate, official and parallel? What is it today? It means even if we made 20% gains on the monies they have invested, when they are leaving, they will end up losing 30% because exchange have been depleted almost by 50%. So even though when you come with your investors, so people are now concerned that what is really the issue? And I mentioned here in your studio here in Lagos before, when we said that we are paying so much on subsidy. And I said it's not just subsidy. You also need to look at the quality of Naira. Naira is being battered. Yesterday, he received several punches from dollars.
What do you think the central bank governor will have to tell members of the House of Representatives that summoned him? Because we know that we don't really export. We do more of imports. So how do we want to balance this end? Talking about the Forex crisis.
If I were me say Mayfair, I would tell them 4 things. Number 1, I don't print dollars. Number 2, most of the dollar crisis, you exchange Naira for dollars for your primaries. For the primaries. Naira was not shared. Politicians were sharing dollars in Abuja. So you cut your nose because you want to spite your face. Now you are concerned that it's increasing. I remember I was on a TV show in Abuja and the anchor told me that after primaries it should come down. I said no, because you have sent a negative signal to the market. More people will feel because of increase that they want to convert their own money to dollar as well. And they may not, the danger is that they may not even go into banking system. So it's a big issue that we have. And I've told government, even though it's not the best solution, you need to immediately be thinking of redenomination of Naira. Because 700 to $1. And people are not even sure what the next will be. How soon are we going to come out of the crisis? So you have politicians who have changed so much, converted into dollars. And in fact, some persons believe that politicians no longer spend Naira. If you are the one making laws, if you are the one steering the affairs of the country, you are the drivers, at the driver's seats, running the country, and you don't believe in the local currency. What happens to people that are investing in the country? How well can they believe in the country? Huge concern, not so. It's a big issue. So I will tell them I don't print. I will tell them, and I will also tell them that, you see, for this economy to have stronger Naira, you have to export. What are the policy? Over $300 billion is what we spent in 1 quarter. Not according to me, according to the National Bureau of Statistics. Gets to import what? Antibiotics. Antibiotics. According to National Bureau of Statistics trade report, 2021 Q4. Not my figures. Again, we have 4 refineries that are dysfunctional. 4. 3 in South, 1 in Kaduna.
There's a report that the Port Harcourt refinery should start producing about 60,000 barrels per day, I think early 2023. I read that report somewhere yesterday.
I always hear that. 2012, I heard 2013. 2014, I heard 2015. 2017, I heard 2018. 2020, I heard 2021. I'm not surprised that 2022, they are telling me 2023, it will start functioning. I hope so. But you see, 4 refineries like Baba's chair. When a barber turns you around, after some time, you will finish barbing and you will go home. The challenge with our refineries is that we've been turning on the same point, but we've not been able to produce 1 liter of petrol, 1 liter of diesel. So if we produce locally, it will significantly reduce the pressure. And National Assembly must agree that it is not wrong for us to privatize the refineries. NNPC is now a limited liability company, even though it's still owned by government. But maybe if it goes public, because when you call it, well, it's not new business. It's either you are in business or you are not in business. You allow those who are savvy to run business to run it. Call our best business people. And we have them. We see them declare their profit on the exchange. But those are not the people running an NPC. They are people whose understanding is civil service. I'm not against any civil servant. But you cannot say the understanding is civil service where, to some extent, 80-20, 50-50, 60-40, don't ask me for the meaning. Don't ask me for the meaning. Are those that prevail in that arena? But you have people who wants to do you see, if you privatize refinery today, some of these skills will disappear. Maybe after a while, may not be immediately. When they revamp it, we have heard about private refinery coming mainstream. Remember in 2012, when that protest was going on, we were told 2014 to come mainstream. We were told 2018 it to come mainstream. We were told 2021 in 2018.
We have the PIA now, so obviously something could also help, reshape the framework of the entire system, institutional framework, host community, everything is in this document.
Not when 80% of your crude is being stolen. 80% of your crude. What is wrong with modular refineries? If we use 20 years to rehearse madness, when are we going to practice it? Exactly. When are we going to practice it? We have talked about modular refinery, we come mainstream, we are going to license. What are the issues? Can we start discussing them? People that were licensed to carry this out, what have become of them? Can we ask questions and find answers? Because the economy is not stupid. If you are not producing, you will be hungry. It seems to agree with my favorite book. He said that does not work. Let him not eat. What is the quantity of work? What is our productivity? As a nation, what's our productivity? If people must pay higher, will the things they are paying higher for also be available? Huge concern, big concern. And I hope that soonest we'll be finding answer to all of this.
A lot of support has been coming with regards to food security. Let's talk about food. It's very important we touch on food before we wrap up this interesting conversation. Because food security is key at this time. And with what is happening through Russia and Ukraine, there is that fear in regards to grains and all of that. We've seen support from the likes of IMF, World Bank, AFDB, everybody coming through to support. And also in-house, we see the CBN also trying to increase, according to what we hear, a lot of more money for the anchor borrowers, a lot of more money from the farmers, and trying to double up whatever is happening today. You're also in the agricultural space, you operate there. So tell me, what is really the situation at the moment? I know insecurity is one thing that scares all of us off.
But first of all, if CBN had not intervened, you should have been buying a bag of rice 60 kg for 60,000. That is what you should have been paying by now. It is because of the support that we see have some level of grain. And I can tell you that most millers don't have sufficient paddy. Why? This population is huge. This population is big. When you see anybody says they want to come to Nigeria, they are not interested in coming to Nigeria because of our politicians, because of our bad road, or because our weather is too good. They are coming because, number one, they have seen huge markets. How can we locally start seeing advantage in our numbers? But that does not mean we should keep growing population that the GDP does not meet up with. But with what we have already, how can we maximize it? So agri, we have seen some support coming from virtually all over. But is that support enough? I don't think so, because you cannot do something outside providing structure. The structure today is still not very good. We have seen central banks supported, and I've also said that the rice is about 35,000 in some places now. 50 kg for good, well-processed rice. Some maximum you see is about 37,000 in some places. You see have 28 and so on and so forth. But that is thanks to the support that we have seen. The support were not to be there, and many people we have to grow rice individually. Honestly, it should be far more expensive than. So logistics is also a challenge. When you have been able to gather output from farm produce, how will it get to the city centers, or how will it get to urban areas where most of these are consumed? You saw what inflation that was reported by the National Bureau of Statistics said. You saw urban inflation, about 13% or so, while you saw what happened to rural inflation. So the urban center is the theater. When you slash inflation into rural and urban, you see that urban center is the theater of what most of these inflationary concerns is going on far sporadically, because the rate at which it jumped by 2% from 11 to 13%, it shows a lot is going on. So how do we get supply available to them? People say that we have enough sufficient output. I can tell you that very few places is where you can have about rice and other grains. So I'm happy when central bank said it was going to come into wheat market. Beyond coming into wheat, my question is, can we put a structure to it such that when it starts, it will not stop? If central bank stop supporting agro sector today, can they stand on their own, even though I doubt very much. But for how long are we going to continue this development finance when we know that there are other areas of the economy that are also bleeding? So on one hand, can we put structure to it? Can we put document to it? Can we even put people together to all of these so that the support we are having, we have a long-lasting effect on the entire economy?
Let's wrap up on this note. What scenario? What do you see happening? Worst case scenario? What's your projection? We continue to borrow. Subsidy continues to be on the rise, and price of crude and all of that. What do you think would happen?
Well, first of all, I don't think that those that are leading us today have the energy to generate revenue. And I talk to you as a revenue person. I don't think they have the energy. I think the culture of 80-20, 70-30, 60-40, 50-50. Not, unfortunately, those that are at the ends of affairs, you may want to call the president, the governor, they don't even know some of these things. So, but people that are there to represent them, or we carry information to them, I think they are comfortable because whether there is sales or not, as one African proverb says, my revenue will come in. They will be paid at the end of the month. So urgency of now is not what many of our people understand. And I hope that in the coming period we are going to see. So do I think we will keep borrowing? As long as you don't have revenue, the truth is that you have no option. The Debt Management Office, DMO, will continue to support Nigeria to see how you can get. But what we need to tell them is, well, we need the best rate so that our country will not pay with high interest rate. Unfortunately, when your interest rate is high at 14%, how much do you think you will raise debt from the, if you like, call it bond or you call it treasury bill? What rate? Will they still be maintaining 1 to 2%? It's not possible. Even if it's 1 to 2, 4, 5, 6%, it means government will have to pay more because there is no cheap one, not everywhere. Even the last time when I visited the Freetown, everything there is not free. You have to pay for it. The culture of don't worry, everything will be fine. Once you elect us, it's not going to be obtainable anywhere. You want to have it, you have to work for it. And that's the way it works anywhere in the world today.
Interesting conversation as usual. I've been speaking to Mr. Paul Alaje. There is a partner and senior economist at SPM Professionals there, breaking it down. Thank you so much for your time. It's really good to see you in Lagos.
Thank you so very much for having me.
All right.